No problem.
I've got a room full here in my business law class at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for our friends at Ridgeland High School and Germantown High School as well, and for our YouTube channel. And we did briefly look at your website, and you are living the life up there in New York City. Graduate of Madison Central High School, and then Ole Miss, Florida A&M, Texas Southern. So you went the. We'll talk about the PWI HBCU route. But now you are there in the big city, Mississippi, girl, right down this road from the Flatiron Building and the Empire State Building in the heart of Manhattan. So super cool. I see you now. I'm like, I know her. So it's super cool. You're up there in the big city doing some great stuff. You started your own law firm, and we'll have you just start out talking us about coming from Madison Central and then going to Ole Miss and your college path, and then we'll talk about what y'all do at your firm.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Williams from Madison, Mississippi, graduated from Madison Central in 1999, and then decided that I was going to go to the University of Mississippi, hotty toddy. While I was there, I had a great time. And then I graduated with a degree in social work. Initially, I thought I wanted to be a forensic scientist, but I think that at that point in my life, I didn't have enough confidence. In my first semester, I got my first F ever in life in biology. And so I was like, yeah, well, maybe this isn't for me. And so I spent 2.5 years undecided, which was probably the best thing I could have ever done in my life. And then I felt like my heart was with people and helping individuals. So I got my degree in social work. Graduated from Ole Miss. Did not want to come back to Jackson in the Madison area. I wanted to go to the big city, which was Memphis for me at that time. So I moved to Memphis and I worked at youth villages for a year as a teacher counselor. And that was really social work 101. So I learned a lot about myself. And in that process, I learned that, well, social work is great, but maybe I want to do something bigger. And I started doing research and I landed on public health. And it interested me because social work deals with people, public health deals with our environment, and everything in your environment is important. So I was able to kind of step back from just focusing on individuals and looking at how different other factors that we have to deal with day to day affect how we live, how we act, how we socialize. So I decided that I wanted to leave my region. I was kind of hesitant to come to the East Coast because I didn't feel like I was ready for it, although I really wanted to live in New York. I've always wanted to live in New York. But I did my research and I found Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. And what was unique about FAMU was that they had a public health program that ranked as high as Harvard, if not higher now. They're usually number one and number two competing. And so I narrowed it down to Florida State and FAMU, took a visit to Tallahassee, and fell in love with Tallahassee, but ultimately ended up with FAMU just because of the opportunities that they had there. And I also got a free ride. So I got to go to graduate school for free through a public health program that they had there. And I spent 2 years in Tallahassee. And while I was in Tallahassee, I finally got my chance to live in New York. My college professor, Dr. Cynthia Warwick, who is now the president at Stillman College in Alabama, was my professor. And she said, "What do you want to do?" And I looked at her and I said, "I want to go to New York." And so she said, "Okay, most people who get a degree in public health want to work for the CDC, but you want to go to New York. I like you, Miss Williams. I'll make this happen." And so my last semester at FAMU, I did in fellowship with Mount Sinai School of Medicine in Manhattan.
Wow.
And I came to New York City. I had a free apartment. I had a job. I was living in Harlem. It was great. And so for 6 months, I worked on asthma related issues with children in Harlem and in the Bronx, and how the situation of bus depots and train depots was adversely affecting their breathing. And so I was able to travel to all of the different schools throughout the city, doing a lot of different studies around asthma. And I actually was able to publish a paper with Mount Sinai through the work I did. And it was really great. After I finished my fellowship, I was offered a position with Mount Sinai, but I decided to come back to the South to be closer to my parents because my father was ill. And it was probably the hardest thing I had to do, but it was a good thing. It all worked out. So I came back to Memphis and I worked at the health department. And I think that that was eye-opening for me as well, kind of being engulfed in public health and realizing that being at the service level can be difficult when you want to see policy changes. So sitting at the health department really sparked or re-sparked my interest in law. And I kept saying, okay, yeah, I know this LSAT. Yeah, I know I'm not good at test taking. Oh my goodness, the money, it's $100,000+. Can I do this? And so I just decided to apply. And I'm always transparent with people. LSAT, I think the lowest score you can get is a 130. The highest might be a 180, something like that. I scored a 143. So I'm, coming from Ole Miss, where I graduated with honors, graduated with honors from Florida A&M, and here's this test that seems like I just can't do it. I can't get over the hump. I'm not going to get into anybody's law school with this score. It's terrible. People were telling me, you tried. Good luck. So I said, no, I'm going to, go and take a course. So I took a 12-week course, convinced that I was going to come back and get that 160 I needed to get a full scholarship to somebody's law school. And I scored a 144 after taking the course. So I did not let that discourage me. I decided I'm going to move forward and I'm going to apply anyway. But I said, how can I make myself more marketable considering I have this score? I know that it's competitive to get into law school. So I focused a lot on my personal statement and the things that I said and how I crafted it. And instead of just giving them an essay, I did an interview where I kind of interviewed myself. Wow. So I took myself out of the situation and I, put up all these questions and I just kind of answered them candidly. And I applied to 6 law schools. I got into 5. Wow. And I kind of decided on Thurgood Marshall School of Law. I had visited Ole Miss's law school and I knew what to expect going back to Oxford. I had visited North Carolina Central. I had visited some schools in Illinois and a school in Detroit. And my heart was just, with, the students and faculty at Thurgood, I felt like I would be a good fit there. And so I started law school in 2008. And it was great. Yeah, first year was eye-opening. I don't think I've cried that much in my life or been, just terrified of work. But I think it was preparing me, for what would be next in my life. And so during my summers, I would intern. I had the opportunity to work at the public defender's office in Greenville on the state and federal level and was a part of some pretty high profile cases. And I also worked at HUD headquarters, so the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. I did all 2 summer internships there, one with the Office of Healthy Homes and Lead Hazard Control, and then another one with the Office of Sustainable Housing and Communities. And so through that work, I got introduced to the government. And I was like, oh, wow, the federal government's kind of cool. And when I finished my last internship, my supervisor at the time looked at me and said, we want you to come back, when you graduate. If you want to come work at headquarters here in DC, you have a job. Wow. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I don't know what I want to do because I'm one of those people. I don't know. I wake up and I decide, literally. So I graduated and I took the bar exam because immediately after law school, you're advised to take the bar. So we partied, on Saturday and Sunday. And then that Monday, I cut off my phone. I cut off contact with people. And I was, in bar study for the next 3 months preparing. while I was preparing for the bar exam, what I didn't prepare for was success. I prepared for failure because so many people, told me, oh, based on your LSAT score, you didn't graduate in the top of your class, you have a great GPA, but we're going to base it on standardized tests. You won't pass the bar the first time. So I went into bar study with that, like, well, I'm going to take it this time and I'm going to see what happens. But, I'm just going to prepare myself for, having to take it again in the fall. So I wasn't applying for jobs. I wasn't considering what was next. I was just kind of stuck on what people were telling me and what I thought I was incapable of doing. Go through the bar in July. I'm in Houston, Texas. That is where Thurgood Marshall is. I finished the bar on Friday evening. I cried all Saturday just because I think I was stressed out and tired. I don't know. And that Sunday, I decided, okay, I'm going to pack all of my things here in this apartment in Houston, and I'm just going to move to New York City. And I'm not going to worry about this bar exam that I've taken here in Texas. I'm just not going to worry about it. It is what it is. I went to law school. I've proven everything I need to prove to myself. And so I moved to New York with no plan. I had a great friend from Ole Miss who let me sleep on his couch literally for 3 months. He said, I'll give you 3 months to sleep on my couch. You don't have to pay me rent. And that's like a gold mine in New York. And no one does that. So I moved with 2 suitcases. I threw all my stuff in storage. Everybody thought I was crazy. I left my car at my parents' house. I was like, I'm done with this. I failed that. I just wanted to move on. Came here, and it was very humbling. As an individual with 3 degrees and a pending law license, I was working at DSW, I was catering, I was working at Macy's. I had 4 part-time jobs at the same time, just trying to prepare myself. I don't know, convince myself that what I was doing was right, but I have failed the bar, so I don't need to be looking for a legal job. Forget that. I'm not going to do it. So I'm walking down 34th Street in November, and bar results come out. You don't know, the day, you don't know the time. All you know is that people will start texting you, or people will start posting, or you'll see people saying congratulations or because the list is public. So I intentionally went underground at 34th Street so my phone wouldn't get any service, so I would not know whether I passed or failed. So I walked around, I walked past the trains. I just walked pacing for about an hour. And finally I said, you have to face it. Soon as I hit the elevator and see sunlight, my phone starts ping, 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 ping. What's going on? So I'm like, okay, let me open this. And all I see are these congratulations. And I literally just hit the floor, like literally fell to my knees on 34th Street, like, oh my God, I passed. Now, here's the issue. I'm in New York City. I've passed the Texas bar. What are you doing now? Do you pack up? Do you go back? What do you do? I said no. So I called my colleague at HUD and I'm like, hey, I passed the bar. They're like, okay, we knew you would do it. So do you want a job? Yes. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I can pack up here and get ready to move to DC. I'm going to get a job tomorrow. But there's a thing called government clearance that can sometimes take 6 to 8 to 12 months, even longer, depending on the position that you're applying for. So while I was waiting for clearance, I started teaching at a business college. And I was a teacher in the GED Associates program. So I encountered a lot of individuals, mainly a lot of immigrants, a lot of dropouts. And I was able to kind of mentor them and get them back on track to get into an associate's program to get technical degrees. And during that time, I kind of slowly started inching back into doing legal work. I would have students who would be asking me questions. And so I was helping a lot of them outside of the classroom and just trying to go above and beyond. And so I did that. And then finally in the following June, which was 9 months, HUD said, hey, okay, we're ready for you. Come on over. And so I started working in the chief financial officer's office on his management staff. doing a lot of the EEO investigations, contracts, compliance, and those types of things. So everybody's like, yeah, you've arrived. You work for the government. And I'm like, yeah, I've arrived. I work for the government. And I just didn't feel fulfilled. I enjoyed my position. I enjoyed, the security, because you could retire out of those jobs. It was high paying. It was great. It was everything that most people would think someone would be happy with, but I wasn't happy because I just felt like I was boxed in and I wasn't able to be and flourish and be the out of the box thinker that I am. So for a year, I won't say I was miserable because I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the government, and I learned about the different avenues in which you can do business with the government, but not necessarily work for the government. So I said, no, this HUD thing isn't for me. I've enjoyed it. This is a year, guys. This is great. I can't read another code of federal regulation and interpret anything for you all. I have got to go. So I packed up again and moved back to New York City. And took a job now working in a firm, working in a law firm, trying to try this legal thing out. And I found that the majority of my time throughout the day was spent working on somebody else's matters, billing time, to the point where I worked probably 6 to 7 days out of the week for about a year and a half, 80 to 90 hours. Working on high profile cases with Barclays Bank, Bank of America, dealing with antitrust, fraud. We dealt with the mortgage crisis. So dealing with a lot of stressful things, but I felt like I still wasn't making an impact. I just felt like I was billing hours and making, the partners a lot of money. So I had a classmate, and I always tell young people connections are very, 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 very important. Education is great, but those connections that you make along the way are very critical sometimes in things you want to do later in life. So I had a high school classmate by the name of Alethea Thomas. She had come to New York City working on Hurricane Sandy recovery. And so she had called me and she was like, I'm here, I'm at some hotel, come see me. And it happened to be 2 blocks from where I worked. So we met up and, it was great to have somebody from home in the city. And she was kind of trying to explain to me, I do disaster recovery. And I was just like, okay, hurricanes, maybe you rebuild houses. I don't know. And so, she was trying to explain it to me. So I was growing tired of what I was doing. I wasn't having fun. I was making all this great money, living in this great city, but all I see it is from a window behind a desk. So I said, I need something new. And so I decided to take a step back and leave that opportunity. And I spent a month just trying to figure out what was next. And Alethea kept saying, just send me your resume, send me your resume. And I'm like, why? I don't do anything remotely near what you want to do. She was like, just send me your resume. So I said, fine, reluctantly. One night I sent it to her. And the next morning, a guy from a consulting firm called me like, hey, my name is James. I got your resume from Alethea. I think you're great. Can you come in today within the next hour to just talk to me? And so I'm like, okay, talk to you about what? What is this job? What do you want me to do? So I go in and I'm calling her like, who is this man? And she's like, just go. And so I go in and I talk to him and, he's like, yeah, I know you're wondering, why are you here? Most people in disaster recovery, aren't you? So I get it. So I'm like, yeah, what's the point? So he explained to me that he was a consultant and that he had been hired by the governor's office of storm recovery to assist with the HUD allocation that had been given to the state of New York. I think it was $2 billion at that time. And that he needed people to come in on his team to help manage the allocation. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I worked at HUD and I did work at the CFO's office, but what does that have to do with this? And so he broke it down and, we had a conversation and it went so great. We went to lunch. And after lunch, he looked at me and he said, I want you on my team and I need to know what we need to do to make this happen. And so I ended up agreeing and calling Alethea like, this is crazy. And for the next 3.5 years, I worked with the governor's office of storm recovery. And in that position, I did everything from vendor management, building out compliance systems, writing policies that are still in place today, building affordable housing. I did so many different things that I was like, oh, this is great. I'm not sitting at a desk doing one thing. I'm able to put my hands in a lot of different pots and learn a lot of different skills that I can transfer across, any discipline. So over time, I, progressed, and James is always one to tell people that I'm the first individual my first year, because I'm a lawyer by trade. So I love an argument. The typical raise is 3%, 3 to 5%, So I felt like, no, I'm better than that. The value that I bring to this company is worth more. And so he came and he was like, oh, we want to offer you a generous 8%. And I said, oh, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to have to respectfully decline. So he looked, sort of like, how dare you? You turned down money? What is wrong with you? And I said, no, I think I'm worth more than that. And I left. I left out of the conference room, but I didn't leave without a plan. So I went back and I went to the executive director of GOSER at the time, who I was working directly under. And I had her write a letter to speak about the things I had done and the offices that I had set up and the projects that I completed. And then I went back and I wrote about the things that I had done and the value that I had added to his company, just being an asset there. And so over the next week, I let it marinate. I sent it to him. I came to work on time, smiling, yes, still doing my job, happy to be there. And he came and he called me and he said, let's go to lunch. And so he took me to a really, really nice restaurant in Manhattan. And so I'm thinking, okay, he's getting ready to ask me. He's going to be like, you're crazy. Like, no one does this to me. And at the lunch, he talked about how no one had ever done something like that before and how impressed he was and how he saw leadership and courage in what I had done. And when I left, I didn't get 8%. I got a 35% raise. And I got offered a VP position within his company. But I turned it down. And so that shocked him as well, because that was job security. And I said, no, here you are, a Korean man from California, here in New York, turning the governor's office upside down with what you have done. Teach me what it is that you have learned that I need so that I can do the same thing that you're doing. And so he looked and he said, you want to start your own business? And I said, absolutely. He said, well, you're a lawyer. Why don't you just, start a traditional law firm? I said, because that's not what I want to do. I enjoy the law. I enjoy, the traditional practice of it. If I need to get in the courtroom and, argue it out, I will. But I've learned that a lot of the things that we argue about are policies. And someone should have been at the table long before we got to court talking about why it is we're putting these things in place, the way in which we're putting them in place. And so I found that my seat wasn't necessarily in the courtroom, but needed to be at the decision-making table at the beginning. So I became sort of like an apprentice under him. And he sponsored my business. He paid all of my business costs for the first year up front to help me get on the ground with what I was doing here in New York City. And on top of that, he helped me realize that everything we do is a business and we're all marketable. And you can sell anything that you do, even if it's looking on Amazon and finding great deals on pens. New York City needs somebody to sell them pens. So if you've already done the research, and you are in connection with the right people, that's a contract that you have right there where you're doing much of nothing outside of something you do, in your ordinary course of the day. So I formed a business in 2016, and I did not stop there. I decided I want to be, a certified business. And so I applied to become a minority and woman-owned business enterprise here in New York City and New York State. It took about 2 years and a lot of tears and a lot of paperwork and a lot of rejections along the way, but I finally got it. And so that sets me apart as a woman-owned and a minority-owned business, because now I have a certification that requires that businesses give me at least 30% of their business because I have this certification and because the law requires them to do so. So in this position, I have had the opportunity to work in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I lived there for 8 months, working on disaster recovery. Of course, San Juan was hit with a major hurricane, and they had never been allocated HUD funds before. And much like New York State, what I was doing, I went to help them. But instead of it being $2 billion, it was $22 billion. And so we took a team down there and I assisted their compliance department with building out compliance and understanding HUD regulations. And I think that was a great experience for me, being outside of my comfort zone, being, just little Black girl from Mississippi, now in San Juan, briefing the governor, briefing HUD secretaries on what we're doing down there. And just making sure that the people who needed the work or who needed the recovery help the most were able to receive it. And there were no hurdles for the Department of Housing down there getting their money. So I enjoyed it, but then the pandemic hit. And like most things, I had to reinvent myself. And that's where my public health degree came in. And I had a company reach out to me. They needed someone with a public health background and the legal understanding to help them design and build out a new business outside of the business that they had. So if any of you travel and you see the Express Spa where you can get your nails done or get a massage, they moved into COVID testing in the airport. And I actually was the implementation manager who opened the first site at JFK, along with the second site at Newark, and then the third site in Boston.
Wow.
And I was able to kind of reinvent myself during the pandemic and market my skills. So I know my time is coming to a close, but I really want to encourage you all, no matter what you do, make sure that you market yourself as someone who has transferable skills. In my business with the government, in my business with the city, people are always like, well, how are you going to do that? And I always let them know I have a skill set that can do anything. It can be transferred across many different disciplines. And people respect that because you're kind of like a chameleon, but you can be trusted with new information or things that haven't been out there to kind of get it done. So in a nutshell, I don't always engage in the practice of traditional law. A lot of what I do is management consulting, professional consulting with government agencies and corporations. It's hard being a small business owner. I have my days where I'm like, this is crazy. I should just go work for somebody. But I enjoy being able to pick and choose those things that I want to attach myself to. And you don't always get that opportunity to do that when you're working with someone else. So if it's something that I believe in, I go after it vigorously. And so right now I work with the Department of Health in Mississippi on their COVID-19 response as a special advisor. And I'm assisting them with ensuring that persons with disabilities throughout the state are not forgotten, but are included in future planning for emergencies. And I also work with the Department for the Aging here in New York City, helping them build out their investigations unit for their social adult daycares. Wow. In addition to also working with the state or the territory, I say state, of Hawaii, assisting them with trying to understand disaster recovery as it relates to the volcanoes and to hurricanes. So
yeah, and what you're saying here, one reason I wanted you to speak is because you think attorney, you just think All Rise and Law and Order and all the stuff you see on TV, but that is such a minuscule part of the legal profession. And, and these small businesses and these government agencies need to have legal professionals to make sure they're following the law, to make sure everybody's protected, to make sure employees are protected, to make sure there's health codes followed. And having all that expertise is extremely important, especially in a big city.
So I don't know if some of your students are interested in anything that I've talked about, but if you all want to contact me, if you're all ever in the city, I'm always telling people from Mississippi to come up here and give it a try. We are built tough, okay, where we are from, and we can make it anywhere. I tell people never be afraid of spreading your wings and going and just jumping, just leaping and trusting that you have everything you need to stay afloat. That is what I do on a continual basis, and it has worked well for me. So if anybody is like, oh, I think I want to go to the city, or you just have any questions, by all means, I'm always available to just chat.
Oh yeah, but I do have just a couple questions before we go.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I have one about PWI versus HBCU, because you went to a PWI undergrad, HBCU graduate in law school. So what are the pros and cons that each one has to offer for young people that may be considering one or the other?
I think that they both offer great things. The differences that I saw were the diversity that I got at Ole Miss versus what I got attending, a historically Black college or university. I can appreciate the different individuals that I met and encountered who continue to be a part of my life to this day, that were at the University of Mississippi. I can appreciate coming home and telling my parents I was going to Ole Miss and them being terrified because of what they thought Ole Miss was going to be. And me being able to change the mindset of my family, as it relates to attending at university. Attending Florida A&M was different for me because I think I was given a little bit more nurturing there than I had received at the University of Mississippi. And the campuses were about the same size, but I think it was just the approach of the professors that I had. They knew that they were preparing me for something that I was not prepared for. And maybe, my upbringing coming from Madison Central, where we were very diverse, and then going to Ole Miss, didn't prepare me for some of the ways in which the world can be, pretty discriminatory, regardless of how educated.
That all the time about, people, Madison Central gets a bad rap, but that's one of the most diverse, friendly places that anybody could ever go. I feel really lucky to have gone there as well.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that those were the big differences, but from both, I gained, skills and friendships and experiences that I will take with me for the rest of my life. So I encourage people not to always focus on the PWI versus HBCU, but focus on where you can be nurtured the most and where it just feels right. You'll know where it feels right. And don't focus on what others have to say about it, but focus on how you feel about it, and you'll end up at the right place.
Got to find the best fit for you. I just have a couple from the students. This is a Marion Bolden. He's a junior, and he asked, what are the questions I should ask when I'm trying to find an attorney?
What are the questions you should ask? First, you should do your own background check on them, look them up to see if they're a part of the state bar. And then you should ask them how they communicate. You have a lot of attorneys that just don't have time. So they may not be as communicative with you as you would like. So I would say, look at the style of the individual, make sure that they're licensed, maybe even go to the state bar website to see if they have any type of sanctions against them.
Like you said,
yes.
The bar is completely open to the public all the time.
Yes, so do your research first, but then make sure that you get someone that is on, that will communicate with you in the way you want to be communicated with, because I think that most people have a breakdown with their attorney when it comes to they're not responsive enough, or they're not, they're too responsive. So I think those are two good questions to start with. Hey, well, where are you licensed? Okay, look that up. And then, well, how do you communicate? Are you a texting person, email? Can I expect to talk to you, this often? A lot of people aren't transparent. So transparency and communication are two important things
And also
you
make
need when
sure they
it
can
comes
handle
to
the
an
type of case
attorney.
you need. Yeah. You're a great attorney, but if I get arrested, I'm not calling you. All right, I just got one more for the student. This is Sanaya Jackson. She's a junior, and she asked, if I'm going to start a business, do I need an attorney to look over my business plan?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You need to do your research in the business that you want to start and then go through your state's process of starting a business, but you do not need an attorney. Is it good to have a legal mind look over it? Sure, but we all have legal minds. Let's not forget that it's all about reading, writing, and taking tests. I tell people at the end of the day, we're all attorneys if we put our minds to it. You can pick up a book, you can pick up statutes. We have our good secretary, Miss Google, who can, put a word in there. She could tell you what it means. So no, you don't need an attorney. It's good. But I trust that your intelligent mind can figure out how to do it without consulting one of us.
Yeah, and like even if you're not going to be an attorney, you really, you have to look at the laws to protect yourself as an employer and an employee and as a citizen. Especially in the rural minority communities, they're taken advantage of so much, and it's important to
Absolutely.
and to know your rights in those situations. But we're almost out of time. Thank you so much. I know you're really busy, and you are living the life up there in the city. It's so cool, and it's so good to see you. But before we go, you were a young Black girl in Mississippi, just like the kids that are here now. We went same high school, same school district, from the same area, but yet you're right there in the middle of the Flatiron Building and the Empire State Building, right in between them in Little Korea. So you're right there in the heart of the world, but yet you made it there, and it was amazing obstacles you faced. And it's hard enough being a woman and being from Mississippi, period, but to be a Black woman from Mississippi to do all this. So even if they never want to be an attorney, never want to own a business, what can they do as young Black kids now to overcome these obstacles they're going to face to become as successful as someone like you?
I would say take chances. Take chances. I thank my parents all the time for not calling me crazy when I come back with all of these ideas. When I left law school, my point from getting to New York City, then going to HUD and coming back, there were a lot of different roadblocks. A lot of different times I slept on couches, a lot of different times I doubted myself, but I took the chances and I didn't look back and I didn't worry about what other people thought about what I was doing. I know what I wanted to do and I know what I was capable of. So I keep telling you, I promise you, we are built so tough. We are built for anything. In Mississippi, we are known for making lemonade out of lemons. We get handed lemons a lot. We get a bad rap. I defend Mississippi all the time, and I'm always letting people know where I'm from. I enjoy Brooklyn. I've been here for 10 years, but I'm proud of where I come from because you all look at us and feel like we can't do it. And I'm proof that we can, and we have everything we need to do it. So just believe in yourself and take that chance and use the people around you, your connections. Because again, it was a young lady from my high school that I've been friends with since 7th grade that put me on the track to doing disaster recovery. And here I am. So, just trust your gut, trust who you are, trust what you have inside of you, and depend on the people around you.
That's awesome.
Put a good connecting, just resources around you.
Well, that is awesome. What a heck of a story. Good night. And congrats, everything you get, you deserve. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Just keep doing what you're doing. And again, thank you for taking some time for us today.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon, my friend.
Send some warm weather here, guys.
No, it's about to storm, so I don't know.
Oh, I don't want that.
All right, I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, thank you.